Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're doing more than just reviewing a book. We're trying to map out a whole mental blueprint. We're diving into Vivek Kumar's ideas in Think Different, Win Big, the power of strategic mind shifts. Our goal here is to really get to the core strategy behind what he calls a mind shift. And, Kumar's background is pretty relevant. Almost 20 years in sales and marketing. High pressure stuff. Places where communication, adapting, well, they're just essential. Now, he's an author, vocabulary coach, turning all that practical wisdom into actionable advice. Feels like it's grounded in, real challenges.
Absolutely. And you can tell this isn't just generic self-help. It feels targeted. It seems aimed at listeners who maybe found some success but feel like they've hit a plateau, maybe. The main idea isn't just improve yourself. It's about making a very deliberate strategic mind shift. It's about actively reshaping your reality, kind of breaking through that feeling of mediocrity. It's pushing for a mental revolution, really, moving from just reacting to things to purposefully directing where you're going.
Purposeful mental revolution. Yeah, I like the sound of that. And he gives us tools for it, right? 5 core components, calls them the foundational pillars. These aren't just vague ideas. They seem like concrete tools for, well, cognitive reconstruction, as he puts it.
Exactly. They form the vocabulary of this strategic mindset: perspective, adaptability, resilience, innovation, and intentionality. And to really use the framework, you've got to understand what he means by each term, how they fit together.
Okay, let's try and unpack the first couple, starting with perspective. Kumar makes this really strong point that your viewpoint basically creates your reality. It makes me think of that classic example, One person sees a failed project as a disaster, career over. Another person with that strategic perspective sees it as, well, expensive market research, basically. Immediate feedback.
That's the shift in interpretation, exactly. He uses this analogy of standing on a mountaintop. The landscape below doesn't change, objectively. But how you interpret it, whether you see this huge distance or a clear path, that totally depends on your viewpoint, on where you are. Your perspective literally sets up your next action.
Right. Then comes adaptability. I love the description here. The pliable clay of human capability. We sometimes think adaptability just means, jumping on trends, but he seems to define it more as pivoting while holding onto your core purpose.
Yeah, it's strength through flexibility, like the willow tree analogy he uses. It bends in the strong wind. It doesn't snap like a rigid oak might. The willow keeps its roots, its basic structure, but it changes shape temporarily to handle that external force. That's adaptability in business, isn't it? Knowing when you need to change your tactics without junking the whole mission.
Okay, so you've got this flexibility, but you also need strength. How do those meet? I guess that brings us to resilience, defined as the unyielding strength within the human spirit. And the metaphor he uses for this one is really powerful. Resilience as the force that makes a broken sword stronger at the break point after it's been mended.
It is a potent image, yeah, because it goes beyond just bouncing back. It implies the challenge itself becomes part of your new, stronger self.
Yeah.
You're not just healed, you're actually enhanced by having gone through it.
But wait, if we're constantly adapting, constantly being resilient, how do we make sure we're not just, running in circles? That seems to be where the last 2 pillars come in innovation and intentionality. They have to work together, I suppose.
Right. Innovation is that creative spark, that drive to find better ways, like the Wright brothers pursuing flight when everyone thought it was impossible. It's the engine pushing things forward. And intentionality acts as the compass. It makes sure all your small actions line up with your big goals, your core values. It's what separates just drifting along from actually steering your ship with purpose.
Okay, but here's a potential issue I see with the framework. We're told to be really adaptable and really intentional. But sometimes being super intentional can make you rigid, right? You stick to the plan so hard you miss a better opportunity that pops up. Don't those two kind of clash?
That's a really important distinction, and I think the book handles it maybe subtly. Intentionality is about the destination where you're ultimately going. Adaptability is about the route, how you get there. So if your intention is to reach the summit, your goal, you need to be adaptable about the path if, say, a landslide blocks your original trail.
Yeah.
Failing to separate those two, the goal from the method, that's often what trips up successful people, I think. They confuse the path with the objective itself.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Destination versus route. Got it. So these 5 pillars, this whole philosophical structure, it all hinges on the idea that we can actually change how we think, fundamentally. But is that just wishful thinking, motivational talk, or is there some, scientific basis? Can we really rewire ourselves?
Well, that's the perfect transition from the what to the how, from philosophy to biology. And the answer seems to be a pretty clear yes. It comes down to neuroplasticity. This is the brain's amazing ability to reorganize itself, forming new neural connections basically all throughout our lives. Your brain isn't fixed. It's constantly changing based on experience and, well, what you demand of it.
And this science, this is the foundation for Carol Dweck's growth mindset concept, isn't it? The idea that abilities aren't set in stone.
Exactly. A fixed mindset says, I'm bad at this, I'll always be bad at this. But a growth mindset, built on neuroplasticity, says, okay, this is tough now, but with effort, I can build the neural pathways to get better. So understanding neuroplasticity means resisting change, holding on to that fixed mindset. It's actually going against your brain's natural tendency to adapt and evolve. You're fighting biology, in a way.
And he gives concrete proof, right? Not just theory, but measurable changes.
Yeah, the examples are quite striking. Look at London taxi drivers and their famous test, the knowledge. They have to memorize this incredibly complex map of London. It's intense spatial memory training. And studies show it leads to a measurable increase in the size of their hippocampus, the part of the brain crucial for spatial memory. The job literally changes their brain structure.
Wow. So the demands you place on your brain can actually reshape it physically.
Or think about stroke survivors. Intense rehabilitation isn't just about physical therapy. It's designed to get healthy neurons to form new connections, to essentially take over the functions that were lost from the damaged areas. It's neuroplasticity in action, the brain actively recovering and reorganizing.
So if our brains are actually built for change, then making this mind shift he talks about becomes less of a should and more of a must, especially today. Kumar starts chapter 4 with that old saying, the only thing constant is change. Cliché maybe, but undeniably true for our careers.
And resisting change has serious costs. If you don't adapt, your skills become outdated pretty quickly. Opportunities dry up. And companies that just cling to old ways, I mean, think Blockbuster versus streaming, they just falter. Stagnation really is the fastest path to becoming irrelevant.
Right, so the answer isn't just, okay, I accept change. It's about actively building a culture, personally and maybe organizationally, of flexibility, continuous learning, seeing change not as a threat, but as a catalyst for progress, like he says. You have to proactively look for new knowledge, embrace things that disrupt the status quo.
Which leads us nicely into the practical side. How do we actually use this neuroplastic potential? It starts with setting goals intentionally. The book calls this your North Star for your journey, personal or professional.
And he breaks down goal setting into 4 parts that often get mixed up, right?
Yeah, it's important to clarify the terms he uses. The goal is the big picture, the summit you want to reach. An objective is a specific measurable step towards it, like complete 2 specific training modules this quarter. A milestone is more like a significant signpost along the way, confirming progress, launching a beta product maybe. And success, well, that's hitting the main goal.
Okay, I think I get the difference. So if my goal is running a marathon, an objective would be run 4 times a week, increasing distance. A milestone might be completing a half marathon comfortably during training.
Exactly. And nailing down that difference is key because it feeds directly into the next technique, strategic visualization. This isn't just idle daydreaming. For it to work, you need the specifics of your objectives and milestones. You need to know exactly what successful action looks like.
This is where we really tap into that neuroplasticity then. He emphasizes that strategic visualization has to be intentional, really vivid, using all your senses. You're not just vaguely thinking, I'll succeed. You are mentally rehearsing that success in detail.
He uses this great case study, Maria Rodriguez, a gymnast training for the Nationals. She won, and a big part of her preparation was these intense nightly mental rehearsals. She engaged all her senses.
So she wasn't just picturing standing on the podium. She was, imagining the feel of the chalk, hearing the crowd noise, the specific texture of the beam under her feet during a tough move, and feeling that rush of nailing the landing perfectly. Total immersion.
Precisely. And the insight there is huge.
Yeah.
By doing these mental reps, she was literally building and strengthening the neural pathways for that perfect routine before she even stepped onto the mat physically. Her brain had already experienced success hundreds of times.
Okay, but the key question for anyone listening is probably, how much time do you need for this? And how do you stop it from just being, generic positive thinking? I think I can. I think I can.
Consistency is the key, according to the book. Not necessarily long sessions, but regular focused practice, daily if possible. And the difference from just positive thinking is the sensory detail and linking it directly to those specific objectives and milestones. If you can't visualize the concrete step you're achieving, the metric you're hitting, then yeah, it's probably just daydreaming. But if you're visualizing nailing that specific milestone action, that's strategic.
Right. So pulling it all together from this deep dive, the core idea seems to be that the battles we face, whether it's sports, business, whatever, they're often won mentally, long before the actual event. Success needs the hard work, the physical effort, obviously, but that mental rehearsal needs to be just as rigorous, consistent, detailed, and strategic.
Yeah, I think we've mapped out that blueprint pretty well today. We've covered the vocabulary, those 5 pillars, the science behind why change is possible, neuroplasticity, and this powerful technique of visualization.
And the main takeaway really is that thinking different, winning big, it's not about luck. It's presented as a deliberate choice. It requires sustained effort, intentional actions, the right mindset, the right strategies, things you have to work at over time.
Which actually brings up one final interesting idea from the book, strategic patience.
It's tough, right? We live in a world that screams for instant results, immediate gratification. But he argues this kind of deep mind shift requires resisting that urge.
Exactly, because real transformation takes time. He uses the analogy of an oak tree. It doesn't shoot up overnight. It gains that incredible strength and size through years of slow, steady, gradual growth. Strategic patience isn't just sitting back and waiting passively. It's active waiting. It means you keep putting in the consistent effort, understanding that the really profound results might take a while to show.
So that leaves you, the listener, with a final question to ponder. Are you ready to embrace that kind of active waiting? Are you willing to measure your progress not